Hi, Namrata. How are you?
Hi, Joyce. How are you?
I'm great. Cool. Thank you so much for coming. So we got a list of questions for you. The first one is, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. My name is Namrata Singhal. I graduated from the HBS class of 2013. It was a fantastic experience, but I have a very, very, very strong and high opinion of Joyce, which is why I wanted to be here to tell you more about it. Prior to HBS, I went to Brandeis University. I got a bachelor's in economics and art history. I then worked at Goldman Sachs, the investment bank, in Sotheby's, the auction house, for a few years before applying to HBS. And ever since HBS, I have been a proud quant and quantitative salesperson for several asset managers in the 8 years since.
That was very impressive. And I heard you got accepted into multiple programs, including the most prestigious ones such as Stanford GSB and HBS. So like looking back, what are the things you believe have helped you with the application? You know, in another words, what was it about you that you think attracted those admission officers, if you would share?
So I think that the first thing I have to share is probably the least helpful, which is that the admissions process is definitely a stochastic process, and it is a luck-based process. And so even if you're very, very, very good, ultimately, I think what's happened over time is that more and more people are applying, and thus the bar keeps getting raised. And there is an element of subjectivity to it as well. It's just, do you have what the person on the other side is enjoying in terms of their reading experience and their interview experience? Mm-hmm. And so a little bit of that is definitely luck. And I don't want to steer away from that, although it's not very helpful to state it.
You're being very humble.
But I actually do believe that, that is the case. With that said, I think statistically, lucky people are the ones who show up and work hard and try to put themselves in the right place at the right time, knowing that even if you are in the right place at the right time, you might not be the one to get picked. And so with that said, I think the standard list of things that matters, I'll reiterate, is the GPA, the types of things you studied at the undergraduate level. That is, in some sense, the least controllable, because that happens to be, that's a historical fact, and there's nothing much you can do about it when you're applying. When you are applying, what your current job is, how you describe your job, the reasons that you want to go to graduate school, how thoughtful they are, what you want to do with your life after graduate school, mm-hmm. and really the mission statement that the school gets out of you of what you can do with your degree later to improve the set of circumstances you find around you. I think that is really what is critical and what is changeable within the framework of today versus all the things that have happened historically, your education, etc. Obviously, the GMAT is important. With this said, I've heard varying stories now about how mm-hmm. the importance of that exam is diminishing. But I would say that if you're not happy with the score that you have, if you feel that you could do better, don't take a chance, go back, try to do it again, try to get to the best score that you feel like you can deliver. And I'd say that the last thing is that the cogency and the hygiene or the presentation and cleanliness of the application matters too. So is your resume really, really well formatted to the last bullet point, to the last dotted mm-hmm. I and crossed T? All the little subsections of the application, do they tie together? Have you represented yourself fully in every single nook and cranny of the application where the school gave you a chance to say anything about yourself?
Exactly.
I think that in a world that is increasingly competitive, even the smallest gradations and differences between people can be highlighted. And so the way you fill that application in, the way you fill your essay in, and the way you do your resume really do matter.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's a holistic process, and every single thing, no matter big or small, matters.
Yeah, you said it better than I.
And since you mentioned the essay, a lot of people are very curious about the HBS essay tips. So they've been using this prompt for many years now. As we review your application, what more would you like us to know as we consider your candidacy for the HBS MBA program? So we heard essay is important for almost every school, but for HBS, this is particularly the chance for you to tell your story. Like you said, everybody is so good and they have all good GPAs and the standardized test scores and the good background. So what differentiates themselves could be from coming from this essay. Any tips around that to how to make that differentiating?
Yeah, my 2 cents on this is authenticity and diversity. And I don't actually mean either in a purely traditional sense. I think that if you are applying to one of the top schools, whichever one it is, Harvard, Stanford, Chicago, etc., you probably already quantitatively have what it takes. You've probably already gone to a superb school, whether it was in the United States or in China, India, or wherever else. You probably have a great GPA. You probably had a life that's already milestoned with many successes, and that's lovely. I think what the school wants to know, though, is how you'll fit inside of this fairly complicated 900-person mosaic, almost like a puzzle that they're trying to construct.
Yeah.
So what you will bring to the classroom in terms of your perspectives, and then even more importantly, after the 2 years of you being in the classroom are done, what you will take out of the classroom and into the sort of broader world, because every single person that goes through that process then carries a brand name with them, and they can do one of 2 things to that brand name. They can improve it or they can significantly deteriorate it.
True.
And so from that perspective, I circle back to diversity and authenticity, because showing the school what's unique about you, even if you have a very standard or within the norm job for business school, so for example, investment banking or trading or something, but I have faith that every single person that is applying has a perspective on why they want to go, what they want to do after, and what's unique about them. What will they add to their section of 89 other people? What will they add to the body of alumni later? I have a lot of faith that every single person has something to say that's quite actually beautiful and quite unique. And the question is, can your essay really truly represent that? And tied into that uniqueness and your authenticity is, can you show the specialness and the diversity of you? And your diversity does not have to be ethnic. It does not have to be religious. It does not have to be nationality. It's something inside of you, an interest, a fact pattern, a passion, a love, a thought process that you bring to the table that's uniquely yours and that makes you who you are. And I think that if you can show that to anybody, forgetting even a business school admissions committee, but if you can show that piece of yourself to anybody, you naturally set yourself up to be liked.
Gotcha. So 2 major factors, authenticity and diversity. So when they think about those things, when they're doing the self-reflection, what would be like, how would you suggest them to find that? You know, you may have many passions, you may have many stories in the past. Which one should they choose? Like, what are the questions would you be asking if you are coaching the students to dig deeper?
You know, in this case, I'm going to go with Justice. I think it was Justice Rehnquist who said, you'll know it when you see it. But I think that going for what feels primal to you, what feels most important in your life, and in some sense, not varnishing it. One thing that I have spent some time in the past writing recommendations for colleagues of mine, juniors of mine at work, and I've spent some time helping people think through their essays and talking to them about what they'd like to show to the school. And one thing I've seen over time is that sometimes people will tend to skew towards what they think the school wants to read or what they think other people would want to like or want to digest. And my advice is, in fact, don't do that. Don't think about how what you're going to say is going to be received, even if it's gritty, even if it starts off unpleasant. It's okay. Show the part of you that is truly, truly important and in some sense authentic, and don't worry so much about how the other side is going to digest it. And so as an example, I worked with a very, very, very impressive analyst a few years ago who actually did wind up getting into HBS, and she went. And one of her greatest challenges in her life was a physical recovery after a very bad ACL tear when she was a ballet dancer as a teen, and sort of the problems that arose from that physically from her injury. Her hesitance in using this was really that, well, it had nothing to do with her work at the moment. It was a physical injury as opposed to any kind of, mental barrier that she had crossed. And it was a long time ago. But for a lot of different reasons, that particular injury and the physiotherapy and the recovery from that injury had been very formative to her life.
Yeah.
And my advice to her was, if this is truly you, and if this set the stage for you to go to be who you've become in life, and if this made some of your most important relationships, then who cares if this is not the perfect story, or if you're worried that the admissions office won't like this. No, this is authentically you. Write it, because that is what you will be able to write best. And in some sense, admissions teams and admissions officers have been doing this a very long time, in my belief. I don't know much about it, but I believe they have. And I think they can sniff any lack of authenticity or pretense from a mile away.
Considering they read 10,000 essays every year.
Tell it like it is. Say who you are. Be proud and true to who you are. And know that it is a luck game. So it's not a guarantee. But do the best you can in authenticity. And I believe that is the best way of stacking the cards in your favor.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. So go back to your application process. We are very curious about your HBS experience and your thought process when you picking the schools. So what made you eventually choose HBS over GSB?
Yeah, so for me, it was interesting. I applied to several schools. The ones that I was really very excited about were HBS, MIT, Chicago, Wharton, Stanford. And then actually, this is interesting. I thought that I would do an application to Kellogg. However, I could never actually get past the essay. And I, for some reason, found the Kellogg essay in my year very, very, very difficult to do. And I guess that segues to the first thing that I have to say, which is that in some sense, the essay is the start of your interaction with the school. And while right now your anxiety is to get in, know that 2 years of your life will be spent at that school, and that's a culture in which you will immerse yourself. So you must like it. In fact, you must love it, and you must enjoy it. And something very visceral about it has to call to you. And so in some sense, think about that even as you're doing these applications and as you're doing these essays and doing the interviews, because while the ball is certainly firstly in their court to choose you, it might come to a time later where you need to make some decisions, and you probably want a broad set of experiences out of which to draw from when you make those decisions, so that they're not, spur of the moment or just reflexive decisions. So unfortunately for me, I didn't apply for Kellogg for that reason. Interviewed everywhere. Over the course of my interviews, I'd say that I enjoyed my interactions with, particularly, I'd say Harvard and Stanford. I'd say a little bit less so, in fact, with Chicago. I wasn't so sure once I went there and saw the campus and really sort of experienced it. I mean, I thought there were many things about it to like, but just for me, very personally, in comparison to everything else I saw, I just wasn't certain how much I would like it. Although, to be clear, the finance program there is probably the toughest and the most rigorous and the best one that exists.
Yeah, with those Nobel.
So this is where it really comes down to subjective choices, and mine sort of seemed to skew that way. After the interviews, and once I got in and got the acceptance letters, I actually made it a point to go to the admit weekends. And I think this is really where my decision got made. And so I really urge you, if you're in that situation, firstly, congratulations if you're there. But secondly, if you're in that situation where you have some choices, I think what's lovely about all of these schools is that they set up forums to educate you and to give you more information with which to make your decision. So these admit weekends are lovely. They're usually 3 days long. They're well, scheduled and well populated by students who are doing similar exercises to you. You get to meet professors, you get to sit in a classroom and experience what the experience will be like. You get a sense for the physical infrastructure of the school, and all in all, you start to get a flavor of what your experience will be like when you're there. And I think once you do that, it adds a layer over and above the rankings and the statistics and the quantitative metrics about the school, but it adds a layer of, okay, well, how will I do here? What will my job search here be like? What will my educational experience here be like? What will my social experience here be like? And those are pretty important questions.
Yeah.
And so I'd say if you're there, firstly, congratulations, but secondly, use those resources, take the time, take the effort, and in this COVID world, to the extent it is, physically and monetarily possible, join the forums on Zoom if it's possible, if nothing else, but try to get some sense for what that experience will viscerally and physically be like when you're there.
Got it. So at the end of the day, it's very just individual choices. Mostly it's the question about fit, and then also like a gut feeling when you're on the campus.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that like everybody else, I was not immune to rankings and metrics and scores, and after 2 years, employment statistics and so on and so forth. And all those things are extremely important. But at the end of the day, where you're going to be happy and where you're going to make lasting social connections and where you're going to actually have an academic experience that makes you sort of intellectually stronger than where you started, those things actually matter just as much, because you'd rather be at the top of your business school than the median of your second choice, or a median of the school that you picked, purely for quantitative reasons. The top 10% of almost any of these amazing programs that we're talking about inevitably are going to do better than the median regardless. And therefore, go where you think you'll be happy.
Got it. Thank you. Then how would you describe your HBS experience? I know it's been many years since you graduated. Does that experience change over time? Like if you have to choose 3 words, which ones would you choose and why?
So it's funny, I think that I use it more and more now than I did immediately after graduation. What I found is, at least in my career path, immediately after graduation was time of learning technical skills and a time of immersing myself into new jobs and learning just new people and new thought processes. Mm-hmm. Sitting back and using the stuff I learned in the MBA, and specifically classes like strategy, classes like Big E at HBS. These are classes that the utility, at least for me, has come later, much later after graduation. And so in some sense, I think I use it much more now than I did before. If I had to describe my experience at HBS, I'd say that it was one of the most awe-striking experiences of my whole life. I don't think I've ever seen so many intelligent and driven people in one place before, and I doubt I ever will again. And really, I think that to the extent that you are motivated to learn and grow, it's quite cool to do it with other people who want to do that as well. And so in some sense, your own rate of change is much higher than it would have been watching other people learn and grow together than sort of doing it by yourself. Yeah. In a solitary environment. And I think that's really the power of it. So I enjoyed it.
Of course. That's, yeah, I can feel it. So, I mean, last question for this interview. You were also international applicant yourself. So what else would you recommend international applicants like us to do to increase their chance getting into a top MBA programs? They're so competitive, worldwide.
Yes, I concur. I think they are extremely competitive. And I think that, I'm not sure if the rules are what they were in my time, but I think that for international students, there are also additional burdens. There used to be this thing called the TOEFL, which was the test of English as a foreign language.
Yes,
I don't know if
it's still there.
Yeah, so there are extra burdens that internationals need to, the entire visa process, which comes after admissions, but still is a massive sort of headache. I have a lot of sympathy for the fact that international students have to do all that. And I believe that in some sense, you have to be even more motivated and even more dedicated, want it even more, because you have to overcome all these extra frictions that are placed in your way. With that said, I have two things that I think are notes of hope. The first is I think that business schools across the board are acknowledging and realizing that diversity in the classroom and drawing from a vast array of backgrounds as opposed to having just one prototype in the classroom is forcibly helpful to that learning process. So that's good news, because I think if you're international, you naturally bring a perspective to the table that is different from a traditional American perspective. And those two things put together can be really quite cool and quite fun in a classroom environment.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my one, I think, statement of hope. My second thought to international students is that use the fact that you grew up differently. Use the fact that you probably have a very different opinion and perspective than somebody that grew up in New York City. Use the fact that you might have had very different travel experiences, that you might speak different languages, that you might have had work experiences that somebody that was born and brought up in New York City or Chicago may not have ever had. And so those might be things that are actually authentic and true to you, that make you who you are.
Yeah.
And those might be the very things that cause the business school to choose you, because those are the things that are the most additive and diversifying when you're put into that classroom setting to teach everybody else around you. So in some sense, again, you might have this desire to blend and show how you could blend into the classroom, pick up the language, pick up the culture, etc. I don't think anybody doubts that. The fact that you're here, the fact that you're applying probably already means that you have significant intellect and can do pretty much anything you set your mind to. But again, so show the thing about you that's cool, unique, and different. And it might be that international background and heritage that is causing you some frictions, but is also the strong suit that makes you the unique person that deserves that seat at the table.
Got it. Thank you very much. So overall, I think if I have to summarize it, of course, you said it in a much nicer way. It's just stick to who you are and then make that shine and make that visible in a nicely written language. And then when they read the essay, they can kind of see you just on top of the paper as a person, as a whole. So that will be the goal that they're trying to achieve. Don't try to figure out what will be the best essay to write. It's more about your story, your essay.
Absolutely. And take the time, take the effort with these applications, because these are expensive, not just on your time, but also on your money.
Yeah.
And so write that essay 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks before the deadline. Put it away for a week. Reread it 1 week later. Even your own words, when you've written them and then left them for 10 days, look and sound different. And you might go back and you might think, wow, oh, I did a great job. Or you might go back and think, no, I need to redo this. I can do a lot better. Give yourself that time. If you're going to spend the effort doing the TOEFL, doing the GMAT, if you're going to fork out the money for the applications, and then in future the money for tuition, give yourself the time with your application and with your essays to make sure that you've done the best possible effort that you can do.
Got it. Thank you very much. That'll be it for today's interview. Yep. Great to have you. Bye. Thank you.